It is my pleasure to speak about the history of Christianity from historical and sociological standpoint. It is first of all an introductory level in dealing with the source, method, and dialogue in history and theology. So primary sources are so important because they are the most direct connection to the past. They speak for themselves. In the study of history and theology, primary sources are scripture, documents written during the historical period of study. Documents is written today as examples of ideological movement. So why study primary sources? Because there is only one way to know history through this primary source. They are used by professional historians. They inform secondary source documents in terms of context of primary documents, and authors' artwork and style, and subsequent interpretations of work are also necessary to be considered. However, there are primary sources usually fragmentary, ambiguous, and difficult to analyze and interpret. So that's why, first of all, we need to discuss the primary sources, first of all, as a priority in connection with the subsequent historical interpretation and commentary. So that's why a secondary source interprets and analyzes primary sources. It is just in order to balance primary and secondary sources in the study of Christian history and theology. There is no such a thing as objectivity when doing history because there's always being a contemporary perspective. So when you read the history, you should bring your own biases and also critical position. History as context. Every document is written in a particular context. There are possible ways of determining context in terms of explicit in document, and also such a context is mentioned in contemporary document by author. And also there are author's subsequent reflection and judgment. And such a thing is mentioned by contemporary authors. History as context. It is provided by secondary sources and editors. In dealing with history as context, there are genera of document which help with context and audience. So, for example, there are theological treatises written for academics. There are also sermons and hymns for lay members of a congregation. There is also cathedral works for teaching laity. We can also mention letters, practical reform document. History also in context. What to know. Author and date, of course, and social, cultural, political, economic situation, audience and its situation, so theological situation is also grounded in conflict, discovery, and shift, etc., etc. So there is a kind of contextual analysis of the theological argument and ideas and discourse. Theology is argument. Every primary source is trying to make an argument. Some arguments carefully structured around particular rhetorical rules. Others still is structured, but only insofar as the author is familiar with the rules of argumentation. There is no analyzing a rhetorical style in itself because we are not rhetoricians or literary scholars, but theologians, particularly with public interest. Using it as a tool, we are theologians trying to get at the crux of a theological argument, and it is always informed by history and tradition throughout the text. So there is a method of analysis for theological argument. There are four basic components: claim, the heart of the argument; reason, supporting the claim, evidence or proof, supporting the reason, and warrant is a general principle or assumption. And there is also agreement with data, and we need a coherence and scope and fertility. So for example, there is also paradigm shift. The paradigm shift, according to Thomas Kuhn, is a scientific revolution, which is a radical transformation of the scientific imagination. But in addition to paradigm shift, there are also 4 criteria in dealing with the truth: religious beliefs and communal story as the primary data. There is a room for reformulation and reinterpretation, coherence. There is extended to interpret other kinds of human experience, a scope in horizon, a different and extended horizon. And it is judged by the power to affect personal transformation and the integration of personality, which is a kind of outcome, a fruitful outcome. There is also a dimension of history as dialogue. What does this give you? There is nothing written in a vacuum. There is the author's own perspective on the time period. For example, Ernst Troeltsch, a father of historical theology or historical sociology, according to him, there is a historical critical method which is embedded within historicism that is based on the triadic principle of critique, analogy, and correlation. A mutually reciprocal relationship between the historical development of Christianity and its social, political, cultural context. This is very important in order to advance our dialogue with history, stretch an understanding of a historical critical method in a way that we need to appreciate it as a kind of sociological theory of interpretation. Against presentism, so an attempt at absolutizing historical study in terms of our present concern should be avoided. Interpreting the past in the presentist term is just kind of a very action in a problematic manner. So here, modernity plays an important role as the standard of judgment against which most of the past could be found wanting. So it can encourage moral complacency and self-congratulation. That is a kind of temporal superiority. Oh, today we modern men have such a temporal superiority in judging the events and also problem in the past. But however, there is a very deep question of the stance of temporal superiority. It maintains a fruitful tension between present concern and respect for the past. There is also essential ingredient. There are also essential ingredient in good history. So that's why we need to keep the respect, the past with humility, curiosity, and learning. Now, history as dialogue. History is never does not imply the bare past as it actually happened. History as a past should be interpreted from historians just like you and me. There is a new meaning in encounter between the horizon of the text and that of the investigator. Thereby, a fusion of a horizon takes place. This is a kind of Gadamerian term, fusion of a horizon. So in my mind, there are history, language, culture, traditional education, memory, etc., etc. So there is no such a thing as the subject in terms of cognitive consciousness. We are all influenced by history and social condition and cultural context. And also there is the text. The text is given as the classic, maintaining a lot of content of the knowledge and understanding and argument. So in addition to the hermeneutical imagination, there is also a study of a church history in a critical constructive dialogue with tradition. There are triadic steps. So we need a take a stance in terms of appreciation of the tradition. First of all, don't try to quickly criticize the tradition, but appreciation and attitude of appreciating the tradition. And then if you find something wanted, then you can just kind of take a critical distance from that problematic spot. And then you finally try to reconstruct a new meaning for the future. There is also hermeneutics of suspicion as a critical method to find the social and historical factors. I cannot believe everything you read. For Foucault, there is an episteme or discourse which is built on the interplay between knowledge and power and access, historical and political context. So now discussion as a way of learning. In our although we are online course for the people at Common Good Governance School, so we tried to create an atmosphere of hospitality in our class in terms of conviviality and congeniality. And we pay close attention to another's words with mutual respect and recognition. So I encourage my friend and student to pay attention to this online course, although it is not kind of physical, face-to-face, but still we need to keep two principles. How do we create an atmosphere of hospitality in our class in terms of conviviality and congeniality? And next, we try to pay close attention to others' words, imagination, and position with mutual respect and recognition. So, with this kind of introduction, so I like to continue to talk about a kind of history and sociology and theology in dealing with the history of Reformation to our present. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.